Can you imagine a normal day like any other in the busiest supermarket in Chicago where people come just to shop, talk, and enjoy peaceful moments? Then amidst the hustle and bustle, an unexpected event occurs. John Carter, a young police officer only 28 years old, walks quickly past the aisles. His eyes don't see the people around him. They focus solely on one man, Michael Lawson, a black FBI agent, standing there choosing items. John pulls out his gun, pointing it straight at Michael. Suddenly, everything becomes extremely tense. The background music falls silent, leaving only heavy breathing, John's heavy footsteps, and Michael's stunned surprise. Although shocked, Michael remains calm. He knows that in this moment, restraint is the greatest strength. He's pointing a gun at me without asking or explaining. Michael thinks to himself, I've been through a lot in life, but never thought I would be treated like a criminal in public. A suffocating atmosphere spreads through the space. All eyes turn toward them. Some people start taking out their phones to record while others stand silently, their looks a mixture of sympathy and shock. This is not a minor incident. It is a sign of a deeper issue, the silent and dangerous persistence of racial discrimination within law enforcement agencies. Let's step into the story of Michael and John, not just to hear, but to feel, understand, and reflect. Because every story like this is the voice of those overlooked, a wake-up call for our entire society. Before diving deeper into the story, please leave a comment telling us where you were listening from and what time it is now. That will help us understand how many people and places this story has reached. Now let's start the story. Michael Lawson, 40 years old, is no stranger to law enforcement. With over 15 years of experience as an FBI agent, he has gone through countless tense situations, complex investigations, and the invisible pressure of societal prejudices still weighing heavily. From a young age, Michael knew the path ahead would not be smooth. As a black man, he faced not only the normal challenges of his profession, but also had to overcome the barriers of racial discrimination. He recalls his early days at the agency, the scrutinizing glances, the whispered comments behind his back. Sometimes colleagues doubted his abilities simply because his skin color was different. But Michael never allowed himself to fall. He focused on his work, constantly learning, and used real results to convince others. Successful cases and excellent handling of events helped him build reputation and trust. Michael was not alone on this journey. Worldwide, many notable figures have fought against prejudice and racial discrimination in public service. Like the first black police chief of Los Angeles, Daryl Gates, a symbol of systemic change from within. Or Loretta Lynch, the first black U.S. Attorney General, a former prosecutor who fought for justice over decades. Michael sees them as pioneers who inspire him to overcome daily difficulties. He believes every step he takes contributes, even if small, to the bigger picture of social justice. But Michael's life is not just about success and fame. Behind the spotlight are wounds and scars unseen. Moments of judgment, instances of suspicion, despite doing nothing wrong, sometimes make him feel lonely and exhausted. When John Carter pointed a gun at him in the supermarket, it was not just an individual act, but a symbol of a larger social problem. Michael understands that his story is not unique, and he cannot remain silent. Because without people willing to stand up and tell the story, society will remain trapped in a cycle of injustice and discrimination. John Carter, 28 years old, is a young police officer, only a few years in the force, but carrying a heavy burden. He was born and raised in a poor neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago, where violence and crime always lurked. From a young age, John witnessed harsh scenes, and from there grew a desire to become a police officer to protect the community and change the lives of those around him. But the road ahead was far from simple. Joining the police force, John faced challenges from a high-pressure work environment, high expectations, and complex cultural barriers. His career was always under strain, long night shifts, the pressure to stay constantly alert and keep himself and the community safe. Within John's mind lurked a constant fear. Fear of making mistakes, fear of losing control, fear of being seen as weak in the eyes of colleagues and superiors. That pressure sometimes made him react hastily, lose restraint, and view others through a lens of suspicion instead of objectivity and fairness. The cultural context within the police force didn't fully support change either. Some traditional beliefs, strong group loyalty, and long-standing prejudices made it hard for John to escape the shadow of flawed thinking. In the confrontation with Michael Lawson, these pressures and barriers led John to make the decision to point his gun, an impulsive action with serious consequences. The lesson here is not just for John, but for everyone working in high-stress environments. Failing to control emotions and reactions can lead to serious mistakes affecting not only oneself but also the community. Training on stress management, multicultural awareness, and communication skills is crucial to prevent similar situations from happening. John Carter is not a villain. He is a human caught in the relentless struggle between professional responsibility and external factors affecting perception. We need to view him with empathy, but also cannot ignore his responsibility in this incident. The supermarket remained lively, but in that moment all sounds seemed choked off by the heavy suspicion in John Carter's eyes. He looked at Michael Lawson, a black man standing before him with a scrutinizing and cautious gaze. No clear reason, only vague suspicion, a feeling based on prejudice, not fact. "He hasn't done anything wrong," a supermarket employee whispered, but John seemed not to hear. John stepped closer, his voice stiff. "Can you show me your ID? I have reason to suspect you." Michael looked at John calmly and replied, "I'm just shopping normally. You have no reason to suspect me." But Michael's words were ignored, replaced by John's intense checking as if Michael were a criminal. This is not an isolated case. Racial profiling, the practice of discrimination in checks and treatment, has become a serious problem not only in Chicago but across the United States. Many similar cases have sparked public outrage, such as Trayvon Martin or Eric Garner, black individuals suspected and treated unjustly solely because of their skin color. John wasn't just suspecting an individual. He represented an age-old system where prejudice and ignorance still seep and cause harm. Michael felt the injustice in every move John made but kept his calm. "I just want to be treated fairly," he thought. These moments clearly show the dangerous impact of racial discrimination. It not only harms individuals, but also breaks trust in the community. Michael and John's story today will show us the mistakes and lessons we need to learn to change so no one has to experience such injustice. The tension in the air grew by the second. John Carter, the young officer with a heart full of pressure, felt fear surge inside him. An unclear, vague fear, but enough to push him to make the wrong decision. Suddenly, John drew his gun from its holster, his hand trembling, but trying to stay steady. His eyes no longer held just suspicion, but turned into a threat. "Stay still!" John shouted, his voice firm and full of resolve. Michael Lawson, the experienced FBI agent, immediately raised his hands, staying calm even though his heart felt like it might burst. "John, you don't have to do this," Michael said gently, trying to calm the situation. "I'm not the enemy." But Michael's words seemed to fall into emptiness. John, overwhelmed by fear and prejudice, did not hear them. The escalation of the situation was not just the result of a moment of anger, but a reflection of mistakes in stress management. When work pressure, personal stress, and long-nurtured biases combine, they create a dangerous mix that can cause people to act thoughtlessly and dangerously. In John's case, fear turned into a weapon that not only hurt Michael, but also threatened John's own safety and those around him. The consequences of poor stress management are severe. It can break trust between police and community, increase racial tensions, and create deep, hard-to-heal wounds. In that moment, John not only lost control of himself, but also lost the chance to do the right thing, the chance to protect and serve fairly and humanely. Michael, though threatened, remained steadfast, proving that true strength does not lie in guns, but in calmness and understanding. This story is a strong reminder of the importance of training in stress control, multicultural understanding, and building trust within police forces. We will go deeper into the next developments, where this event will change both their lives forever. When the gun was pointed directly at him, Michael Lawson did not panic or shout. He knew that in life-or-death moments, calmness is the strongest shield. Officer Carter, Michael said evenly, softly but firmly, "I am not a threat to you or anyone here." Michael's eyes looked straight at John, showing no fear, but a deep understanding of the fear and pressure controlling him. While people around began filming and whispering anxiously, Michael calmly pulled out his phone and called Police Chief Karen Davis, someone he trusted, a leader who always prioritized justice and fairness. "Karen, I need you here immediately," Michael said calmly on the phone. "I'm in a tense situation." Michael knew that by staying calm and contacting a respected leader, he was using the power of understanding to cool down the situation, rather than letting fear dominate and lead to disaster. This is a valuable lesson in handling racial discrimination. Knowing the law, being aware of your rights, and the ability to stay calm in stressful situations can save your life and others. Michael did not let fear overwhelm him, but used restraint to prove that true strength lies in composure and wisdom. His story is an inspiration for those who have faced injustice, proof that even in darkness, there is always light from reason and humanity. In that moment, Michael not only protected himself, but also sent a clear message: calmness and understanding can change the outcome even in the toughest circumstances. The tense atmosphere in the supermarket seemed marked by every pounding heartbeat and the gun pointed at Michael Lawson. Suddenly, the sound of running shoes echoed through the aisle. A woman entered the scene with confidence and authority: Karen Davis, Chicago's police chief. Karen, a powerful black woman, carried the huge responsibility not only of upholding the law, but also being a symbol of fairness and transparency within the police force. Her eyes stopped at the scene before her. John Carter, still holding his gun, pointed at Michael while Michael calmly kept his hands raised. John, her voice rang out stern but reassuring. "Put your gun down immediately." John hesitated, his face tense and full of pressure. But as Karen approached, her firm voice and authoritative gaze made it impossible for him to resist. She stepped beside Michael and gently asked, "Are you okay?" Michael nodded, his eyes full of grateful trust. Karen turned to John. "Your actions not only violated protocol, but also damaged the trust of the community we are trying to build. You must take responsibility for what you've done." Karen's arrival marked a crucial turning point in the story. She was not only a leader, but also a guardian of ethics and justice, standing on the side of truth and human rights. In a police environment where power can easily be abused, the role of a leader like Karen is extremely important. She understood that building a police force trusted by the public requires not only strict rules, but also transparency and fairness in every action. Karen did not hesitate to use her authority to stop abuse of power at its earliest signs. Through this story, we see clearly the strength of responsible leadership, not just a title at the top, but a symbol of justice and positive change. Karen Davis is a living example of this, and her timely presence saved Michael from an unimaginable disaster. As the tension gradually eased, Karen Davis stepped closer to John Carter. Her eyes were sharp, filled with sternness and no tolerance. "John," she said evenly but firmly, "can you explain why you drew your gun and pointed it at your colleague in public?" John was awkward, avoiding eye contact. Feelings of guilt and shame mixed with fear, knowing his career was hanging by a thread. Karen's question was not just to hear an explanation, but to set a standard. No one is above the law. No one has the right to abuse power. The strictness in Karen's demand for John to take responsibility was a lesson for the entire force. Every action must be controlled and transparent, especially when it affects the lives and dignity of others. History has recorded many instances where leaders intervened timely to protect justice and human rights. Like in the Rodney King case in 1991, when leaders and prosecutors were determined to bring abusive officers to justice after the violent video was made public. Or the case of Chief Brenda Faulkner, who transformed the culture at Memphis Police Department by implementing transparency measures and strict multicultural training. Karen Davis is not only a leader of the present, but also a symbol of change and hope. She is unafraid to face and handle the toughest internal issues to build a police force the public can trust. John, in that moment, realized he must take responsibility for his actions. There was no turning back, only truth and justice. This dialogue was not only the first step in handling the incident, but also a reminder of the importance of personal responsibility in a legal system. Immediately after the stern conversation with Police Chief Karen Davis, John Carter was suspended from duty. No explanation or excuse could cover up his wrongdoing in the eyes of leadership. The story now extended beyond a personal matter, becoming a question of justice and accountability. An internal investigation was launched immediately under the close and transparent supervision of Chief Davis. A specialized investigative team was formed to clarify every aspect of the incident. They began by collecting evidence from the supermarket's security cameras, which had recorded the entire sequence of events. Every moment, every action of John and Michael was carefully analyzed. In addition, detailed statements from witnesses present at the scene were recorded, including customers and supermarket employees who saw the event. The combination of modern technology and vivid evidence created an accurate and clear picture of what had happened. The investigative team did not stop at reviewing the event, but also assessed John's attitude, behavior, and decision-making process. They examined whether there were violations of internal procedures or laws. Police Chief Davis repeatedly emphasized the importance of transparency and fairness in the investigation, pledging not to tolerate any wrongdoing, regardless of who in the force was involved. This marked the beginning of the quest for justice, not only for Michael, but for the community awaiting change. John Carter now faced not only disciplinary action, but also judgment from society and himself. The internal investigation quickly moved into its most critical phase, collecting and analyzing evidence. In a dark investigation room, security camera footage was displayed on a large screen. Every frame, every passing second was closely watched by investigators. The footage showed John Carter approaching Michael Lawson with a serious expression, his eyes full of suspicion and lack of restraint. John's gestures not only showed alertness, but gradually turned into a threat as he drew his gun. Racial discrimination, prejudice, and lack of emotional control were clearly reflected in John's movements in the video. Behavioral experts provided detailed evaluations pointing out signs of stress, excessive aggression, and procedural violations in handling the situation. The video was not only objective evidence, but also a strong rebuttal to any denials or distortions of the truth from John's side. The power of surveillance technology in cases like this is crucial, not only helping to clarify the truth, but also contributing to greater transparency and accountability within the police force. Thanks to these images, the investigation team could build the most complete and truthful picture of the incident, aiding in making accurate decisions on disciplinary actions. The combination of technology and human effort formed a shield protecting justice, not allowing abuse of power or racial discrimination to be concealed in any form. Michael Lawson, standing at a distance, knew that technology had become a powerful ally in the fight against injustice. The small investigation room came alive as each witness took the stand to recount what they had seen. An elderly woman with white hair who had been near Michael when the incident happened spoke with a trembling but sincere voice. "I clearly saw that he did nothing wrong, but the police treated him like a criminal." A boy of about 10 with bright eyes spoke with a mix of confusion and admiration. "Mr. Michael was very calm. He wasn't scared. But the police officer seemed very angry." These testimonies were not just words on paper, but powerful voices. Voices of justice, truth, and people who refuse to accept injustice. They clearly described John Carter's aggressive attitude, impatience, and wrongful actions. At the same time, they praised Michael's calmness and resilience in a difficult situation. The voices of witnesses carry strong influence. In many famous cases, community voices have become a lever to push for justice, breaking silence and concealment. They are not only witnesses but also protectors, ensuring that the truth is not forgotten. Through the story of Michael and John, we see that justice depends not only on the law, but also on the voice and consent of society. Each witness is an indispensable piece to complete the picture of fairness and transparency. And from these truthful accounts, the investigation team gained strength and motivation to continue the journey in search of the truth. After all the evidence and witness testimonies were presented, John Carter stood before the investigation board with a tense expression. He knew that the camera footage and the community's voice were against him. Instead of admitting his mistake, John chose a familiar tactic in law enforcement: denial and blame. "I was just following procedure," he declared with a confident tone but obvious tension. "Michael was uncooperative, which forced me to react that way." John tried to portray himself as a proper law enforcement officer, while blaming Michael for causing difficulties. He even cited lack of support and work pressure to justify his loss of control. This was not the first time these tactics had been used in police-related incidents. Denying wrongdoing, blaming the victim, and attempting to downplay the severity of actions are common tricks many offenders in law enforcement use to avoid responsibility. However, lies and excuses cannot hide the truth when evidence and testimonies tell a different story. The most important factor in this case was the steadfastness of the investigative team and Michael Lawson refusing to be shaken by the lies and tricks. The valuable lesson for all of us is when faced with injustice, deceit, persistence, and determination to stand firm are the keys to finding truth and justice. The story of Michael and John is not just a personal confrontation, but a battle of truth against lies, fairness against abuse of power. As matters increasingly leaned toward truth and justice, John Carter was no longer alone. Behind him was strong support from his lawyer and the police union, familiar forces in the legal and law enforcement system. John's lawyer, David Miller, was well known for defending police officers' rights. He appeared in a neat suit with a cold gaze and confident demeanor, ready to use every legal measure to protect his client. "We will not allow anyone to be treated unfairly," Miller declared in a meeting with the investigation team. "Procedures must be respected, and John's rights must be guaranteed." The police union, an organization protecting members' interests, quickly intervened. They provided not only legal support, but also pressured leadership to reduce John's punishment. Pressure from the police union is an inseparable part of internal cases. In many instances, the union acts as a shield to help officers escape serious consequences despite misconduct. However, this also causes much controversy. Many believe the union contributes to covering up wrongdoing and slowing reform. In this investigation, the investigators faced significant challenges gathering evidence while resisting influence from powerful groups protecting John. Police Chief Karen Davis understood these difficulties clearly and was determined to uphold transparency. "We work for justice, not for personal interests or external pressure," she emphasized. The influence of the police union on the justice system is a complex issue. While they provide necessary protection for officers, they can also become barriers to change and accountability. John Carter's case exemplified this conflict between individual rights and social fairness. Amid the spreading crisis, Karen Davis, Chicago's police chief, showed decisive and transparent leadership. She would not allow John Carter's incident to become a stain that tarnished the police department's reputation. Instead, she viewed it as an opportunity to strengthen community trust in fairness and law enforcement accountability. Karen closely supervised the entire investigation process, from evidence collection and witness questioning to evaluating John's behavior. She ensured that all procedures complied with laws and professional ethics. "We cannot tolerate any wrongdoing, no matter who the person is," Karen said at a press conference, her voice full of determination. "Transparency and fairness are our guiding principles." She did not hesitate to face pressure from police interest groups, firmly asserting that upholding ethics and justice must come first. Through this case, Karen Davis sent a clear message. Leadership is not just about management, but about taking responsibility to handle crises fairly and effectively. She understood that in difficult times, proper leadership not only resolves the issue, but also rebuilds trust for both the force and the community. Karen's story is a valuable lesson about leadership responsibility, a duty not only to the organization, but also to society and every individual affected by the event. After that tense and painful incident, Michael Lawson embarked on a psychologically challenging journey, a path of recovery and self-overcoming. No one could see the deep wounds inside him left by racial discrimination and John Carter's wrongful behavior. Michael faced injuries, not only physical, but also emotional, the pain of betrayal by those who were supposed to protect him, fellow police officers. There were long nights when he sat alone in a dark room, quietly reflecting on what had happened, on the injustice he endured. But Michael did not allow himself to fall. He knew courage was not the absence of fear, but the act of moving forward despite it. He sought help from mental health professionals, joined support groups, and spent time with family and friends, the greatest sources of encouragement that helped him stand strong. Michael also drew inspiration from famous figures who overcame injustice to become symbols of resilience. Like Nelson Mandela, who endured 27 years of imprisonment, yet never lost faith in justice and freedom. Or Malala Yousafzai, the brave young girl fighting for girls' right to education worldwide, despite life-threatening dangers. Michael's story merged with theirs, proving the extraordinary power of spirit to triumph over adversity. He not only healed himself, but also became an inspiration for those fighting injustice and discrimination. Michael's journey is a reminder that even in the darkness of injustice, there is always the light of determination and hope. News of the incident at the Chicago supermarket quickly spread across the city. People from crowded neighborhoods to downtown areas were shocked and outraged by John Carter's actions, a young police officer who used unnecessary force with racial bias against Michael Lawson. Local and national media flooded coverage with in-depth articles analyzing every aspect of the case. Social organizations, civil rights groups, and the Black community organized peaceful protests calling for change and reform within the Chicago police force. This event was not just Michael and John's personal story, but became a symbol of the nationwide issue of racial discrimination in law enforcement. People began to awaken, realizing the power of unity and collective voice in demanding justice and fairness. Community solidarity created immense pressure on authorities, forcing them to act transparently and seriously. This was clear proof that only when everyone speaks up and acts together can injustice be eradicated. Michael Lawson's story inspired many to stand up and fight, not only in Chicago, but across the United States, to build a more equal society. The strength of the community and the voice of the people are the decisive factors for real and lasting change. The day of the final hearing arrived, and the atmosphere in the small but solemn courtroom seemed to hold the weight of the entire city of Chicago. The public, the press, Michael and John's families and officials all gathered, their eyes focused on the disciplinary board. The thorough investigation, indisputable evidence, and honest testimonies of witnesses had painted a clear and undeniable picture of the supermarket incident. After hours of closed deliberation, the disciplinary board issued its verdict. John Carter would be immediately dismissed for abuse of power, threatening a colleague's safety and serious violations of professional ethics. Soft applause echoed in the room as the decision was announced, a delayed but meaningful justice. Outside the courthouse, the Chicago community expressed strong support. National media praised the decision as a step forward in the fight against racial discrimination within the police force. Police Chief Karen Davis spoke to the press. "This proves our commitment to maintaining fairness and accountability across the entire force. No one is above the law." Michael felt some healing of the wounds in his heart, knowing that justice had finally been served. But this story was more than a single case. It symbolized change, an important step for the legal system, and a community thirsty for justice. John's dismissal not only cleansed the image of the Chicago Police Department, but sent a clear message: racial discrimination and abuse of power will not be tolerated. It serves as a reminder to all of society that justice must be protected and upheld by every individual, organization, and community. And within each of us, this story is a call to action, not only to change the system, but to change ourselves. After months of turmoil and hardship, Michael Lawson's life began a new chapter, one of recovery and hope. Michael was no longer the man wounded by scars in his heart, but had become a symbol of resilience and strength overcoming adversity. One gentle sunny afternoon, Michael and Police Chief Karen Davis, his companion and protector of justice, held a warm wedding in a small garden outside the city. Family, friends, and community gathered to share joy and offer sincere blessings. The wedding was not just a union of two loving people, but a symbol of unity, forgiveness, and rebuilt trust after difficult trials. Karen and Michael moved forward together on a new path, supported firmly by loved ones and the community. Life after the storm was not just about moving on, but about rebuilding trust, honor, and justice in society. Michael shared with friends, "Sometimes life throws us unexpected challenges, but it's in those moments we discover where true strength lies." The great lesson he carried was, even when wounded, everyone can rise and continue their story with faith and love. This is also a reminder for all of us about the power of forgiveness, persistence, and community spirit in creating positive change. Michael Lawson's story is not an isolated event, but a symbol reflecting the reality of racial discrimination within police forces across the United States. It shows that despite many efforts, prejudice and misconduct still quietly exist, causing deep wounds and loss of trust in communities. The strong reaction to the incident sparked a wave calling for comprehensive reform in policing. Many new training programs were implemented to raise awareness about racial discrimination, stress management skills, and multicultural communication. Initiatives using surveillance technology such as body cameras on officers aim to enhance transparency and accountability in law enforcement. It was not just about skill training, but cultural change, building a work environment that respects diversity and human rights. Discussions about legal reforms have also been accelerated, aiming to limit arbitrary power and strengthen independent oversight. This story also highlights the crucial role of the community in monitoring, speaking out, and driving change. No reform can truly succeed without the participation and consensus of society. And above all, this is a call for each of us to stand up, speak out against injustice, and contribute to building a fairer and more equal society. We have journeyed together through Michael Lawson's story from the tense moment in the supermarket to the relentless fight for justice and truth. This story is not just about one man, but the voice of millions forgotten and hurt by racial discrimination and injustice. It reminds us that justice is not something that comes naturally, but is the result of courage, persistence, and the determination not to remain silent. Michael stood up not only to defend his own rights, but also to inspire all of us, those who long for a society that is equal, respectful, and just. You, me, and everyone share a collective responsibility to build a better world. Let's start by sharing this story, speaking out against discrimination and injustice where we live. Don't let voices like Michael's be forgotten, because our silence today can become our own crime tomorrow. Be the changer, the inspirer, and the light that guides the way for justice. This story ends, but the journey for justice is only beginning. Which side will you choose? Thank you for listening. If you found this story meaningful, please subscribe and share so more people can awaken and take action. We can change the world if we raise our voices together.